What if I told you that every act of kindness could hide a shadow, and every so-called evil might be a misunderstood cry for justice? What if your hero was just a villain with better PR? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Proverb often attributed to Saint Bernard of Clairvaux. This isn't just about ancient emperors or comic book tropes. This is about you, about us, about the daily choices we make at work, in our relationships, in the quiet moments no one sees. The line between hero and villain isn't painted in black and white, it's etched in gray, and often with trembling hands. Let's start with a thesis. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. When a person suddenly has the means to do whatever they want, what rises to the surface isn't something new, it's what was always inside, hidden, dormant, waiting, like a volcano underneath a city that never thought it could burn. Historically, Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, served as a mentor to Emperor Nero, the same Nero who would go on to become a symbol of madness and tyranny, a pupil gone rogue. A man who set Rome ablaze and watched it burn while blaming others. But Nero didn't become a monster overnight. He had teachers, he had guidance, and still, something cracked inside him. Was it the power, or was it the man all along? Fast forward. Every era has its Neros, corporate leaders, political giants, spiritual influencers, people we once admired until we saw who they were when the masks fell. You've probably met a few of them. Maybe you've been one. Or flirted with it just for a moment. That small moment when you realized, I could get away with this. And no one would know. Psychologically, we all wear masks. Carl Jung called it the persona, the face we show the world. But what happens when that mask grows teeth? When the line between self-control and self-interest starts to blur? The inner tyrant awakens slowly. A small compromise here, a quiet betrayal there. It doesn't need a crown, it needs permission. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. You don't need an empire to become a tyrant. You can be a tyrant in your family, your friendships, your office, with your silence, with your demands, with your inability to see beyond your own narrative. So let's ask it again, with clearer eyes. Hero or villain, who do you become when no one tells you no? Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Abraham Lincoln. If you're waiting for someone to crown you emperor before you examine your ethics, you're already in trouble. We live in an age that worships autonomy. Be your own boss. Live on your own terms. Take what's yours. And yet, what we rarely admit is how little mastery we truly have not over others, but over ourselves. Let's be blunt. It's easy to play the hero when life is hard. Struggle breeds humility. Scarcity forces discipline. But comfort, power, influence? That's when the real war begins, and it's not out there. It's in here. Seneca, in his famous letters to Lucilius, makes a bold distinction. The spirit, he says, can either be a noble ruler or a tyrant, depending not on external power, but on internal clarity. When we govern ourselves with wisdom, dignity, and restraint, we become masters of our own destiny. But when greed, lust, ego, and fear creep in, that's when the tyrant sharpens his blade. Let's revisit Nero. He didn't lack brilliance. He lacked boundaries, internal ones. He had no voice inside him that could say, "This is too far." That voice, the one that separates the righteous from the rotten, isn't inherited, it's forged through pain, through doubt, through uncomfortable truth. Now zoom out to today. Ever seen a manager who humiliates their team just because they can? A parent who uses guilt as currency? A partner who manipulates behind a smile? These aren't dictators in golden robes. They're people like us, ordinary tyrants in casual clothes. This is the uncomfortable insight. Power is not measured by how many obey you, but by how many times you say no to yourself. Psychologists call it ego inflation, when the self begins to believe it's above correction. It's subtle, seductive, and socially rewarded. But here's the tragedy. Every time we silence that inner warning, we chip away at our own moral structure, and the tyrant inside smiles. The hero's journey isn't about slaying dragons, it's about not becoming one. So, ask yourself not, how would I act with more power? But rather, am I already misusing the power I have? Can a hero commit evil and still be called good? Or does a single fall define a lifetime? This question isn't abstract. It's alive in boardrooms, in courtrooms, in every home where a parent screams too loud but believes it's for the child's good. It's in every political speech that promises salvation by identifying a new enemy. It's in us, especially when we believe we're right. Take Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher king. By most historical accounts, he was wise, restrained, deeply reflective. And yet, under his reign, Christians were persecuted. Some scholars argue he may not have directly ordered it, but he also didn't stop it. So, was he a hero who made a few compromises, or a hypocrite in a toga? Now shift to our world. Consider whistleblowers, people like Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning. To some, they are heroes, defenders of truth. To others, traitors. What if both are true? Can someone break the law for a higher moral reason and still be dangerous? This is the heart of the dilemma: intent versus impact. Psychology teaches us that humans are masterful at self-justification. It's called moral licensing, the tendency to allow ourselves ethical lapses because we've earned it through previous good deeds. Like the activist who belittles their team because they believe the mission justifies their behavior, or the successful person who cheats on their partner because they've sacrificed so much. Even the most virtuous can fall, especially when they believe they're beyond falling. Let's say it out loud. The difference between a savior and a tyrant is often just unchecked certainty. That's why the inner voice, the conscience, must remain louder than the applause. Because power doesn't just tempt you to control others. It tempts you to rewrite your own story, to erase your mistakes with a few noble quotes and a smile, and by the time you realize you've crossed the line, you've already burned the map back home. Here's the twist. You don't need to be a historical figure to face this. Every day you are asked, in small, invisible ways, to choose: will I control or will I guide? Will I exploit or will I serve? Will I justify or will I confess? And the most terrifying part, you can be both the hero and the villain in someone's story at the same time. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Oscar Wilde. So what happens when evil hides behind virtue? When tyranny doesn't scream but whispers through smiles and carefully chosen words? Let's talk about the most dangerous kind of villain, the one who believes they're the hero. History is full of them. Torquemada, head of the Spanish Inquisition, tortured and executed in the name of salvation. Stalin believed his purges were necessary for the purity of the state. Even Pol Pot claimed to be cleansing Cambodia to bring about justice. The blood they spilled was justified to them by ideology. But this isn't just history, it's human nature. In psychology, this is known as moral disengagement, when people disconnect their actions from ethical standards by convincing themselves of a noble purpose. The language changes. I had to. It was for the greater good. They deserved it. That's how cruelty becomes policy, how coldness becomes righteousness, how control becomes protection. We see echoes of this every day. The boss who micromanages because I care. The partner who isolates because I love you too much to let you get hurt. The public figure who manipulates for the sake of unity. And we believe them because their intentions sound noble, because they might even believe it themselves. But the Stoics warned us long ago. Intentions don't absolve outcomes. Seneca's image of the inner spirit, sometimes a ruler, sometimes a tyrant, is terrifyingly accurate. You don't always notice the shift. One day you're standing up for truth. The next, you're suppressing dissent for peace. One day you're leading with clarity. The next, you're silencing others for their own good. This is how the mask forms, not the cartoonish villain's sneer, but the respectable mask of virtue, the socially acceptable tyrant, the praised controller, the loved manipulator. And maybe, just maybe, it's us. That's the uncomfortable mirror this reflection holds. We don't need to be monsters to do monstrous things. We just need a strong enough belief that we're right. So where does that leave us? Here's the challenge. Before you speak in the name of justice, ask if you've silenced dissent. Before you demand loyalty, ask if you've earned it. Before you wear the mask of the hero, ask if you've ever used it to hide. All a man truly has is his choices. The rest is circumstance. Viktor Frankl. The hero's journey isn't about slaying external beasts. It's about spotting the mask and having the courage to take it off. The truth is, tyrants rarely appear in thunder and chaos. Most begin with good intentions and a quiet compromise. We tend to imagine tyrants as distant figures, leaders, warlords, historical ghosts. But what if tyranny doesn't start at the top? What if it starts in us? In the subtle, everyday erosion of our empathy? Let's break it down. Tyranny, at its root, isn't about power, it's about control. Control over outcomes, over people, over reality itself. And the most dangerous thing about it? It grows in silence, in the harmless decisions, the necessary lies, the justified dismissals. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo, known for the infamous Stanford prison experiment, discovered something terrifying. Given the right environment, ordinary people become authoritarian faster than we're willing to admit. All it took was a uniform, a label guard or prisoner, and within days, cruelty bloomed like mold in the dark. Why? Because we want to believe we're good even when we're not. We'll twist reality to fit that need. We'll gaslight others, suppress facts, rationalize selfishness. Because the alternative, admitting we're part of the problem, is too heavy to hold. And that's how the tyrant is born. Not in a palace, but in a quiet moment where you choose control over compassion. Let's make it even more personal. Have you ever cut someone off mid-sentence because you knew what they were going to say? Guilt-tripped someone to get what you wanted? Justified a lie because they couldn't handle the truth? Ignored a colleague's contribution to shine more light on your own? It's not dramatic, it's subtle. But every one of those actions is a brick in the temple of self-righteousness, the very structure tyrants live in. And yet, you are not doomed. Because unlike Nero, unlike the countless lost to ego, you can stop. You can see the shift. You can name the tyrant when it starts whispering. That is your power. So the next time you feel the urge to dominate, manipulate, or silence, pause. Ask yourself, is this strength, or is it fear in disguise? Because the strongest rulers aren't the loudest. They're the ones who can sit in discomfort without needing to control it. The tyrant in you is not your destiny. It's just a part of you that forgot how to listen. Here's a paradox no one likes to admit. The more light you shine, the darker your shadow becomes. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Carl Jung. Let's talk about that shadow, the part of you that wants revenge, control, admiration, dominance. The part that smiles when others fail, even if you won't admit it. The one that fantasizes about being above consequence. You don't have to act on it, but it's there, in all of us. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Your capacity to do good is equal to your capacity to do harm. You are not only capable of greatness, you are also capable of destruction. That's what makes you human. The real danger is not in having a shadow, it's in pretending you don't. Look at history. The greatest tyrannies were often fueled not by open malice, but by moral purity. Stalin believed in creating a utopia. The architects of the Inquisition believed they were saving souls. The problem wasn't their belief, it was their refusal to acknowledge their shadow, to see their own ego behind the sacred cause. Modern psychology calls this shadow projection, when we refuse to see the darkness in ourselves, so we project it onto others. That's how enemies are created. That's how we become pure, and they become monsters. And once that division is made, anything becomes justifiable. Now, reflect on your own life. The workplace rivalry where you felt superior. The relationship where you needed to be right even if it meant hurting someone. The inner voice that says, "They deserved it. I was just protecting myself." That's your shadow talking. And if you don't name it, it'll start making your choices for you. But here's where things turn. Because if you have the courage to confront your own shadow, to look it in the eye without flinching, you gain something most people never do: authentic power. The kind of power that doesn't control others, but integrates the self, wholeness. And that's what separates the true leader from the tyrant. The tyrant hides his shadow. The leader dances with it. So the next time you feel righteous fury, ask yourself, am I confronting evil or avoiding my own? Because every tyrant was once a person who refused to do inner work. And every true hero, they did it anyway. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. At the end of every empire, every failed revolution, every broken relationship, there is always a single, quiet moment. A reckoning, not with the world, but with the mirror. We've circled around power, ego, morality, and the mask of virtue. We've questioned heroes, exposed villains, and uncovered how thin the line is between them. But now comes the real question, the one no one can escape. What kind of ruler lives inside you? Let's return to Seneca's image, the spirit, as either sovereign or tyrant. This isn't metaphor anymore. It's psychology. It's philosophy. It's your life. The sovereign is not perfect. They don't pretend to be. But they are awake. They notice when their voice becomes louder than others. They question their own motives, even when praised. They lead, but they listen. They speak truth, but they hold space for doubt. They know that true power lies in restraint, in the choice not to dominate. The tyrant, on the other hand, is driven by fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being exposed. Fear of being wrong. That fear hardens into arrogance, silence, violence, even in soft forms. And here's the twist most people miss. You don't become a tyrant by gaining power. You become one by refusing to examine your relationship with it. Let's bring it to real life. Your career? You'll be tested. Promotions bring status, but will you share the stage or take all the light? Your relationships? Love brings vulnerability. Will you nurture it or use it to manipulate? Your inner world? You will face storms. Will you confront your shadow or blame others for the rain? The only thing that will determine who you become is whether you do the hard, relentless work of self-mastery. You don't need to be a philosopher. You just need honesty. Radical, uncomfortable honesty. And once you see the tyrant inside you, something magical happens. You don't have to become him. You can outgrow him. You can dethrone him. Not by violence, but by awareness. That is the true hero's journey, not to conquer the world, but to govern yourself with clarity, courage, and conscience. No man is free who is not master of himself. Epictetus. So, we return to the question. Hero or villain? Tyrant or sovereign? You decide not once, but every single day. In silence, in conflict, in love, in power. And your answer will echo in the lives you touch, for better or for worse. The world doesn't need more rulers. It needs more rulers of the self. The throne is yours. How will you rule?